the AM show. And we get into it with Liz Haifonasari, a media consultant. But let's start with the papers we have today. The Daily Graphic is here. We're serving you Ghanaian Times Daily Guide, the Finder Graphic Business, and if time allows, the Daily Statesman as well. Let me just tuck the business, graphic business, right behind the Daily Graphic. So let's get into the stories. But it would be interesting as we have our show today to reflect on some of the things that former President John Dramani Mahama has been saying. We'd like to hear from you. We're discussing them all right in our big stories, but what are your thoughts? What is your take? Do you believe that this administration is the biggest scam in the Fourth Republic, like the former president suggests? And how about our justicial system? Is it really in the quagmire, as the former president would suggest, to the point where leadership of his party is suggesting that until we do away with the current Chief Justice, Justice Enim Yeboah, things will not fall in their proper places? Share your thoughts with us via our live stream. The hashtag is AMShow. There is also this very interesting matter that I'm going to be running by Liz Haifonasari together with my guests when they join the conversation. It has to do with this post by Dr. Ato Cassiel Forson, or Cassiel Ato Forson, whichever way you put it. And he posits that we know the Exim Bank has given us $750 million. The question is, instead of $750 million, he posits that we've got $713 million, which would leave a shortfall of some $37 million. And he's asking where that money is. That question is on my mind as I probe further into some of these matters this morning. But let's get into the papers. Daily Graphic now will make Central Region preferred investment destination. That's according to Justina Marigold Assan. She is Central Regional Minister. I'll bring you some quick details from that story. Planting for food and jobs needs review. Former Best Farmer advises. And this is a story that I followed in the last few days. There's also 15% COLA hits workers' accounts. We'll be getting some details of that. If you're in the public service and you've received your COLA, you can let us know. 15%. That wouldn't be bad, right? But of course, people will tell you about inflation and the dollarization of our economy and everything else that is happening, and how maybe 15% is not amounting to much. The last time we checked, if memory serves, inflation stood at 31.7%. So we wait to see what the figure for August will actually yield. But there's also Colonel Damwa relieved of a post, and that's a story. That's a story on the back of that letter from the office of the president himself, signed, put together by Bedieto Asante, the executive secretary to the president, stating that, well, he's been asked to move on, and one of the deputies will take over from there as his time is due. Well, let's take some details from those stories. So the first story about 15% COLA hitting workers' accounts. The Comptroller and Accountant General has paid the 15% cost of living allowance agreed on between the government and organized labor. An amount of 485 million Ghana cedis was disbursed to the account of over 600,000 public sector workers on government's payroll as COLA for July and August, yesterday, August the 29th, 2022. So yesterday it hit the account. If you've still not received yours, let us know. And if you have received yours, you can let us know. Exactly how much was it? Of course, it would depend on what your grade is in the public service. But the Comptroller and Accountant General, Kwesi Kwening Bosompim, confirmed to the Daily Graphic in an interview that the amount disbursed was made up of 2 months' allowance paid in lump to the workers. So for July and August, all of it was paid together. He said the 15% allowance was paid in August because when the negotiations were concluded in July, the salaries of public sector workers had already been paid, and so the allowance had to be pushed to August. And he said, I urge public sector workers to reciprocate the good faith the government has shown during these trying times and work hard to increase productivity. And that is the latest development here. All right, let's check out some other stories as well. Let's go to page 20 now and look at the Colonel Damwa situation. And I believe as of Friday, he will have to pack bag and baggage and leave that office. And some have taunted that, well, it appears the small boy, he called the OSP a small boy. The small boy seems to be making some inroads, but it's neither here nor there. It's about what the right thing is to be done. And we don't even know whether this is factored into all the happenings of late. But the commissioner of the Customs Division of the Ghana Revenue Authority, Colonel Kwadwo Damoah, retired, has been directed by the president to hand over his duties to an acting deputy commissioner at the authority, Seydou Idrisu Idisa. The directive took effect on Friday, August 26, 2022. The order was contained in a letter from the presidency signed by the president's executive secretary, Nana Bediatu Asante. Quoting that letter, following the expiration of your contract of service as Commissioner, Customs Division of the Ghana Revenue Authority on 13th October 2021, the President of the Republic has directed that effective Friday, 26th August 2022, you hand over your duties and office to the Acting Deputy Commissioner, that is Preventive Service, Seydou Idrisu Idisa, who acts as the Commissioner, Customs Division, pending the President's substantive appointment. It also reads, the President thanks you for your service to the state and wishes you well in your future endeavors, the statement said. Colonel Damoah had been serving in his position in spite of his contract expiring in October 2021, according to the letter from the presidency. But we cannot decouple this from recent happenings. So let's take a further probe. Colonel Kwadwo Damoah had, in recent weeks, been in the news after he publicly attacked the special prosecutor concerning investigations into the operations of a food importing company, La Bianca, which suggested alleged irregularity at the port. After the special prosecutor had released a report on the infractions, Colonel Damoah publicly questioned the substance of the investigations. He said he would cooperate with the office of the special prosecutor, but he also made certain utterances that some have found unpalatable. Well, these are the happenings so far, and the Customs Division of the GRA has been mentioned in 2 cases being investigated by the OSP. We'll see with time how that pans out. And we'll also see specifically to do with La Bianca and Madame Hene, how things pan out. We've heard so many things. I personally have seen documents from so many ranges, but we'll allow the OSP to do his work and we'll see how the cookie crumbles. Let's go back to page 3 of the paper. Planting for Food and Jobs needs review. Former Best Farmer advisors. I'm talking about George Asamoah Amankwa, 2014 National Best Farmer, who wants a review of the Planting for Food and Jobs program. So he has called for this review to give full meaning to the huge investment the government is making in the program. George Amankwa, who was the National Best Farmer for 2014, said the review should place emphasis on storage to help farmers operate their farms at a profit. Speaking to the Daily Graphic in Kumasi last Saturday, Mr. Amankwa said there was no question that the Planting for Food and Jobs was a laudable program for which the Akufo-Addo administration had to be commended. However, he said the implementation, which had focused so much on production without corresponding measures to address post-harvest losses, had been a disincentive to farmers. Quoting him, he says, "It is unacceptable for the government to support farmers with fertilizer and other farming inputs to improve production, only for farmers to, at the end of the day, look on helplessly as their produce rots away because there is no ready market." So I go back to the question that I always pose. What happened to the silo system that Nkrumah initiated? Sometimes it beats me how the foresight, how he could forecast so far into the future, like with the Tema Motorway, like with the Akosombo Dam, and yet, somewhat, we're 65 years into this democratic enterprise or this national independent enterprise. And we now seem to be tweaking, finding our way hazily into some of the things that he found so easy to do back then. We're now talking of smelting aluminium and the rest, something that as early as 1967, Nkrumah had plans of doing. Of course, the coup in 1966 put paid to all of that. But pretty interesting, right? Sometimes when you think of it, every year, our farmers, whether it is yam, plantain, tomatoes, whatever, there are gluts in certain, parts of the country. Go to the Kintampo area and all of that, the Puno region. Yet we are not able to harness this. If we were properly doing that, we probably wouldn't be facing the hike in food prices like we're seeing now, even with fuel prices. It would have been more stable. But because we've not been able to do this, here we are. So here is another initiative by government, another one of its fundamental people-oriented projects. But just as with free SHS, just as with Planting for Food and Jobs, it is in dire need of a review. If you keep doing the same things you've always done, you'll keep getting the same results you've always got. But who will listen? That's the question. Anyway, that is the story there. Let me just take a quick swipe at this one. When you take a look at page 47 of the paper, Nyaho Tamaklo backs Asamoah Gyan's World Cup bid. I'll just bring you a snippet of that. And the former GFA chairman, Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo, has jumped to the defense of Asamoah Gyan and vouched on his capability to represent the Black Stars at the 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar. All right, that story on page 47 of the paper. If you asked me, and pardon the mischievous laugh, I couldn't help it. If you asked me, I would say Asamoah Gyan, reflecting what some other people have said, nothing against him. I'm still crushed by that 2014 miss, but if you look at his goal tally, record goal scorer, and all of that, what more has he to prove? And what more has he to prove? He's earned his money. He's played his time. I think he's mentioned, was it Al Ain or some other team that he played for, that it was the best move he could have made. He went there, made some big bucks. He's established himself as a businessman. He's put out the book Legendary and all of that. He has, he has that clout in our space. I would like to ask a pointed question though. Asamoah Gyan, what more? I mean, is it for love of country? What more are you hoping to achieve with this? Because look, let's be fair. We've seen him play for Legon Cities, and to be brutally honest, in this country, we don't like speaking the truth. We like to flavor things. Asamoah Gyan was a pale shadow of himself, even for Legon Cities. This is the Mundial, the World Cup. Everyone comes here. So I'm not saying it's impossible. We've seen him in the gym trying to shape up, but it'll take quite a lot. How about the young people we've brought into the Black Stars? The ones who qualified us for the World Cup. And again, how about the foreign-based players who are now joining our team? Some of them are even going to struggle for playing time and playing spots. And now we want Sebi old legs to come back in. I don't know. But only time will tell whether that will actually happen. On the back page of the Daily Graphic, man kills mother, two sisters at Drapa. A sad story there. Tampala, a suburb of Drapa in the Upper West region, was thrown into a state of shock when a 20-year-old man, Anthony Yendo, went berserk and pounded 3 women to death last Sunday. All 3 women, his direct relatives, were Bozomo Yendo, 60, the mother of Anthony Yendo, Rebecca Yendo, 22, and Cynthia Dabuo, 45, his sisters. A 4th victim, a male infant of 8 months who was strapped behind her mother while she was under the violent attack, is on admission at the Drapa St. Joseph Hospital, seriously wounded. These stories leave you with a very bad taste in your mouth. But anyway, that is that. Let's get into some other stories here. Let's take a look at graphic business now. NTHC asks for 500 million Ghana cedi bailout. And interesting times, because for about, 3 years now? Some stories have got me following the NTHC and its developments. I know people whose funds, let me leave it there. But no surprise that this is happening. NTHC, of course, one of our national banking resources. So let's get details of that story. Distressed state-owned investment firm, the NTHC, National Trust Holding Company, has requested an urgent bailout from the government to enable it to meet its indebtedness to rural and community banks, that is RCBs, across the country. The 500 million Ghana cedi bailout request is also expected to help the trust to settle its numerous retail customers who have been victims of its liquidity crunch since 2019. See what I told you 3 years ago, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. The company's debt overhang has its roots in the financial sector cleanup exercise that occurred since August 2017. In spite of the huge money spent as a result of the banking crisis that threatened the country's financial landscape over the years, the deep-rooted challenges still linger with the rural and community banks feeling the brunt of the problem that has so far cost the taxpayer in excess of 21 billion Ghana cedis and counting. Apart from individuals and companies that suffered, many RCBs, which were established many decades ago to help deepen financial inclusion as well as fund some businesses with their jurisdiction, within their jurisdiction, are on the verge of collapse. But specifically to wrap on the NCHC, which has a total portfolio of almost 1 billion Ghana cedis, has suffered some impairments from most of its assets and is currently unable to meet its debt obligations to customers and almost all the rural banks. The managing director, Isaac Charles Acquah, confirmed the company's, let me go to page 6 to continue with that story. He confirmed the company's indebtedness to its clients in an interview with the graphic business and said it was working to restructure the debts. Okay, so that is the story there. Let's take a quick look at other stories in the graphic business. Why Bank of Ghana wants to buy dollars from mining and oil firms. It's actually an interesting one. Bank of Ghana to boost reserves by $500 million. Let's turn to page 3 for that one. So the Bank of Ghana is confident of boosting its reserves by $500 million from miners, oil and gas producing firms, and other major exporters between now and the end of the year, December. The purchases are to accrue from a new arrangement that allows the central bank to pay cedis for foreign exchange, that is forex, that have been repatriated by the exporters. Already, the bank purchased $20 million from one mining firm last week in a positive start to the new program that seeks to bolster the Bank of Ghana's reserves in the midst of rising demand and a depreciating cedi that is attributable to weak buffers. The director of the research department of the bank, Dr. Philip Abraduotu, told the graphic business on August 27 that the Bank of Ghana also received commitments worth more than 120 million American dollars from other mining companies in the program's first week. And so those are the stories in there. You can also check out this one. Ghana Stock Exchange records 31.13 million Ghana cedis profit, highest in 31-year history. Let me say a very good morning to Liz Hayfron-Asari, who joins the conversation. Good morning, Liz.
Good morning.
Pleasure to have you. Tuesday morning, we have just about some 10 minutes to wade into the other stories. But let me start with the 15% COLA that is hitting workers' accounts. That's in the Daily Graphic newspaper for the months of July and August. It's coming together as a lump sum from yesterday. So workers, public sector workers would start getting that. There's also that story about reviewing Planting for Food and Jobs as the 2014 National Best Farmer has called for, because guess what? The storage systems, among other problems, are hampering, productivity levels. Your quick take on these stories?
With agriculture, if we don't improve canning our foods, if we don't improve agri-industrialization,
right,
would keep having a lot of post-harvest losses. And if we continue having that, then food security is definitely a problem. We need to go from just having the farm produce at its basic production levels to adding value to the produce so that it can have a shelf life, so we can have food all round. But that takes a lot of capital. So I think that it needs to be structured properly. As we encourage people to grow more, we should go up the chain and make sure that when they grow more, they do not lose everything that they are producing, that it is bought off of them and then probably value added so that it can store and we can have it all year round. Which is the other story.
So 15% COLA hitting the accounts of public sector workers. Are you excited by that?
No, it's not. It's not exciting because wages and salaries are very low, and so with the rising cost of living, I'm wondering what difference 15% will make. If we were still back in the day where everything was at probably $1 to 3 cedis, then we probably would be looking at something. But now I think that even the 15% has whittled away with the rising cost of living.
Okie doke. Let's get into some other stories. There's also Veep wraps medical practitioners for poor professional attitude and conduct. There's also ORC to delist 2,584 dormant companies for failing to file annual returns and financial statements. Pictured there, Mrs. Jemima Owari. There's also, we've not issued permit to any company to undertake reconnaissance, prospecting and mineral exploration in forest reserves. That's according to the Minerals Commission. Immigration officer lands in trouble for allegedly defiling 2 girls aged 9 and 10. And Colonel Damwa, I'm sure you'd remember him, Liz, relieved of post as Commissioner of Customs Division of the GRA. Some suggest this is as a result of the cases hanging around his neck like an albatross as far as the special prosecutor is concerned. So a quick look at those stories. Page 16, let's start from there with what Dr. Vice President has been saying. So the Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, has commended medical practitioners for their tireless work in providing quality healthcare for Ghanaians. According to him, healthcare practitioners work day and night to ensure that the health needs of the citizenry are met. He, however, expressed worry about the increasing numbers of complaints about allegations of clinical negligence, poor professional attitude and conduct, inhumane and degrading treatment of patients, and some practitioners who provide services outside their areas of competency in terms of their training. Dr. Bawumia said this yesterday during the 50th anniversary celebrations of the establishment of the Medical and Dental Council, themed Medical Training and Practice in Ghana, the Past, the Present, and the Future. Let's also check out that story on page 17. ORC to delist 2,584 dormant companies for failing to file annual returns and financial statements. That tends to happen a lot. So a total of that number of companies are to be delisted from the country's register of companies for failing to file their annual returns and financial statements as directed by the Office of the Registrar of Companies. They include private and public companies limited and unlimited by shares, private and public companies limited by guarantee, including schools, churches, associations, unions, and fan clubs, professional bodies, and external companies. The exercise, which continues till the end of the year, is the second phase of the ORC's cleanup, which started earlier this year with the deletion of 2,788 out of the targeted 100,000 companies. And so if you are not aware that you have to file your annual returns and financial statements, you have to do so now. If it's not too late to remedy the situation, you can go to the Office of the Registrar of Companies and sort matters out. There's also this bit about immigration officer landing in trouble. I'll end on that one for defiling 2 girls. So the Asankragwa Magistrates Courts in the Amenfi West Municipality of the Western Region has remanded into police custody 50-year-old senior officer of the Ghana Immigration Service, Elom Chekbo, after he appeared before it charged with defiling 2 girls aged 9 and 10, respectively, in June this year. The incident occurred at Newtown, a suburb of Asankragwa, where he allegedly defiled the 2 girls aged 9 and 10 years. Chekbo was brought to the court last Thursday on a bench warrant issued by the court last Wednesday when he failed to show up despite several invitations made to him to appear in court in connection with the charges leveled against him. Now, according to him, the suspect, and I'm talking about the police investigative team, the suspect resides in the same house with the victims, and that it had been alleged that on occasions he organized parties for the victims and other children within the Newtown neighborhood. Inspector Benpom said that in July this year, one of the victims, the 10-year-old, fell sick and was not recovering after several medications. And when her mother inspected her private parts, she suspected someone had had sexual intercourse with her. This prompted the father to further question the daughter, at which time the victim revealed that somewhere in June this year, the accused sent one Christiana to call her and the other victim, that is the 9-year-old, to collect gifts in his room. And there, Chekbo had sexual intercourse with them. Very sad situation. I'm hoping it's not true, but if it turns out to be true, then I guess the prosecutorial, aspect of the law will have to kick in and matters happen from there. Your quick reflections, Liz.
It gets to me each time I hear about defilement or rape because it is not something that we should be still harping today. We believe that there has been enough education, and we believe that men like the immigration officer ought to know that these crimes are traumatic for the girls. It will cause her a lot during her life. It could cause her even having children. And therefore, if he has been invited several times and he refused to go, he should have been picked up long ago. If investigations have proven that he needs to be questioned, then I don't see the reason for the delay. And then again, it comes back to the treatment of the girls. I think that parents should have a closer relationship with their children, especially their daughters. So when things like this happen, they're not too afraid to open up to their parents. If the parents do not get that close to the girls, then you find that they would not open up to the parents when they have to. If she was that close to her mother, she probably would have told her mother something long ago. So we need to educate our daughters to be outspoken, and we need to listen to our children often, so that when they're saying things, we really would take them serious. Even if you don't believe them, there's nothing investigating. And then if you find out that it's not true, then you can deal with them. But at least listen and make sure that you carry it through. And the girls won't always be abused this way. I keep saying that sometimes the men would want to trouble two girls at a time, but most of the time, if you're 2, 3, 4 girls moving together, it becomes difficult. But this is a man who has lived in the house with them, so they probably know him. So they probably have some amount of trust. But I think that investigation should be done, and it should be done quickly. And if there's any medical attention that needs to be given the girls, it should be given to them free.
Let's quickly get into some other stories as we make the most of the time left. There's this story. I'll link it to the John Mahama story, but let me look at this one. The Finder newspaper, SIM re-registration drops by 98% after deadline extension, which is an interesting development. Of course, now we have the re-registration app that supposedly people can use to do their registration. There's also government pays 485 million Ghana cedis as COLA. That's with the Finder newspaper. But these stories, I just want to put them together. The Daily Guide says, Mahama attacks judges again. That story is on page 3 of the paper. Let me just get to it. And it says, former President John Dramani Mahama has launched a blistering attack on the judiciary, saying that the image of the country's judiciary has badly deteriorated, that Ghanaians openly make a mockery of the justicial system and of the justices. He stated, if people are not poking fun about politics and inducement being used to sway the hand of the justices of the lower courts, then it is poking fun and making statements about the 7-0 of the unanimous FC verdicts, which mostly involve cases of a political nature in our Supreme Court. This is an unfortunate but serious development. So Mr. Mahama, who was the 2020 NDC presidential candidate, was bounced unanimously by the 7-member panel of the Supreme Court. That we know. But speaking at the opening of the second annual Lawyers Conference of the opposition NDC over the weekend, ex-President Mahama said, to wrap with the quote, recently, so badly has the image of our judiciary deteriorated that many of our citizenry openly make mockery of our justice system and of our justices. The phrase go to court is these days met with derisive laughter instead of hope that one will truly get justice if he went to the court, he asserted. Let's link that to the story in the Daily Statesman where a judge supposedly is cautioning the former president. So a retired Court of Appeal judge, Justice Isaac Dose, I believe this is it Doche? They were trying to, but because Doche is still there, but has cautioned former President John Mahama against the tendency of dragging the image of the Supreme Court into disrepute. He has also described comments against the judiciary by Mr. Mahama as, quote, an act that can be cited as a threat to the country's democracy and will not only affect the apex court, but every Ghanaian as well. Your quick thoughts on these?
I used to think in the past that perception was everything, but perception is not everything. I believe that with some of these cases, if you go to read the judgment in detail, everybody puts out what they think, and you realize that some of the issues that are dealt with are not dealt with on the same level. Everybody has, and I'm talking about the judges. Everyone sees the case for what it is. And I believe that if you have read law, there's certain things you'll be looking out for in whatever case comes before you. Over the years, it has, in the recent past, it has been that you get the 7-0 judgments. And I have always said that isn't the one person who sees something that the complainant has brought forth that puts the complainant probably in a position where you can consider differently from the others. But then, not being a lawyer, I would read it just as I would read it and not know what to look out for. So I take it at face value. And so maybe we need to be a little more informed about judgments and informed about how the decisions came about. And if Justice Doche is cautioning that we should not just lump all the judges and put it out there and try to demean our judiciary, is something that we need to look at. But again, I think that the justices of the superior courts need to be more open. There should not be that mystery around judgments. If people understood the judgments properly and how they came by the judgments that had been given, and it was not left to only those who have read law, I don't think that we'll be making the statements that we are making. But from what we said, it looks like the judges are compromised, especially when Anas's expose came out. And we're not seeing differently from the expose that has been given. And you hear all kinds of stories, but you wonder whether the stories are true, whether they're made up, or whether it's just to put them in bad light. But I think that the judiciary needs to clear its name, and clear its name as quickly as possible.
All righty. Well, unless you have any final thoughts, this is how we'll wrap it up. We're veering into sports, and of course, I'll bring you some sporting news from the Ghanaian Times. The back page, Oli win Galka G6 tournament after they beat Bechem United by 2-0. Oli Dade, Oli Gbogbo, Oli Nkonson, carrying the day there. And of course, Chelsea also deflated Mediama on penalties to claim third spot. Are you a fan of football, Liz? No.
Only when Black Stars is playing.
Okay. Just a quick one then. Are you in favor of Asamoah Gyan coming back into the Black Stars?
Asamoah Gyan, how old is he?
He must be 30-something. With these footballers, it's always tricky. I'm sure you know what I mean. But he's 30-something officially.
No, but I'm just wondering because football, to me, is a fast game, is it not?
It is.
And you have a lot of younger people playing the sport. If you're older, what are the risks involved?
Right.
But if he has that morale to kind of like get the team together and get the team going, he can do it in another way other than being a player himself.
Good point. Good point. Liz, refreshing always to catch up with you. Thank you for joining us for another morning.
Thank you.
All right. And that is Liz Hafen-Asari, media consultant, talking sports there. I got some sports out of it, squeezed it. Anyway, we get into sports now. Do stay with us on the AM Show.